welcome to the Corporate Services and Economic Growth Overview and Scrutiny Committee here at July 25th, July 21st, 2025. I'd like to welcome you all to this first meeting of this term. There's a lot of new faces both to the committee and to this council as well. It does have quite a broad coverage, this. There are some existing members who carry forward from the previous corporate services. Committee for myself, and committee a number of members as well. What we'll do is we'll make a start straight away. Get through. I do have to advise you that I've had to move items around on the agenda because of officers' availability, because they do need to be elsewhere. I'll advise you of the items as we go through them and where I've had to move them around. And we start on item 1, which is apologies for absence. Do you have any apologies, please?
I have apologies from Joe Williams. I'll agree.
Okay, thank you. And from the officers? Any apologies from the floor? Okay. Item 2 is minutes of the last meeting. Last meeting, which took place prior to elections, it was held Monday, 31st of March 2025. We have a proposer for accuracy of those minutes, please. Councillor Taylor, seconder. Councillor Robinson. Item 3 on the agenda is disclosure of members' interests. Do we have anything that anyone needs to disclose which they haven't previously disclosed, referring to the items on today's agenda? Point out that when the agendas are sent out and you look at the items on the agenda, if anyone has any concerns or any queries and they're not sure if there's anything that they don't need to disclose, please just get in touch with us. Have a discussion and they'll clarify if you need to make any further disclosures. It's much better just to get in touch and have that conversation rather than maybe put yourself into any situations. It's easier just to have that conversation. Excuse me, we'll move on to item 4, which is the forward plan of cabinet decision. No decisions of cabinet since the previous meeting of the OSC and latest forward plan key decisions. Any further changes will be reported to the committee. And we'll go through our scrutiny officer on Nicholson.
Yeah, so it's proposed in 2 parts, as the chair said. The first part is decisions taken by the cabinet for this last minute. What that enables members to do is to look at cabinet decisions and consider whether or not they are issues that the committee might want to have a look at in the future. So you've seen what cabinet decided. You might want to ask the so what of that. And very often it's not immediately apparent. Even though it will be that you might want to have the decision ready for a period of time, see how it goes, and maybe look at it 6, 9, 12 months time and see whether or not the decision the cabinet took was the one, the outcomes are the ones that they thought would be enacted. And if you discover, perhaps by receiving an update, you'll see a year's time that hasn't quite gone quite, then that would be the opportunity then to suggest some tweaks to go back in. So that's the purpose of that section of the report. And then we have the forward plan of cabinet decisions, and these are decisions to be taken. And this gives the opportunity to scrutiny committee to perhaps have a look at issues before, to get the opportunity to, before the reports are actually written, before the officer was to determine how the report's going to look. So it just really gives members an opportunity to have a very early opportunity to look at some of those issues. beforehand, and that's not necessarily pre-scrutiny. That's pre, before an issue has actually been. But it's up to the to identify those and so that's what that is. I don't know if there's any issues that arise from that. Anybody else? No?
Well, at the same time, Councillor Dunn.
It's just a quick question, Sean and Chair. I wasn't at the last meeting, but in the minutes it says that it mentions Popland Burn and Advanced Northumberland will come back to the committee to give more information on the development of the scheme. Have we had that further information, or is that still to come?
No, so that was initially the rules from the presentation, and it was suggested that this is sort of a generalisation, not just on Portland Burn, but if there were any issues that Advance wanted to bring to this committee as sort of a general update, in addition to their annual update, then they would be quite happy to do that. And they projected that they might have something to bring to you in sort of September, November.
Right.
But it's going to just lie in the books until such time as it's
Okay, Councillor Robinson.
Sean, we've got the cabinet decisions and we've got the forward plan. Do we know how many suggestions this committee made to cabinet in that time frame?
recommendations.
Yes.
Um,
I mean, I know normally it's a nod through and we agree, but there's certain times where we suggest things.
have a look at that if you
It
want.
just, it'd be handy if it was, everyone we can assess one against the other.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you're absolutely right, but quite often sometimes that doesn't happen within a time frame.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand the question. Yeah.
Councillor Jackson.
I'm just wondering about the date. Is that the date when it will be discussed?
It's already scheduled to be.
Yeah, so that's scheduled to be done now. Okay.
So ideally, if you want to look at it, the further away the better.
Yeah. More time to think about it.
Okay. Okay then. First moving around with the agenda, I'm going to move to item 8, which is the Member Inquiries Task and Finish Group, the scoping report. But Nigel Walsh, Nigel, if you pick that.
Yes. Thank you, Chair. This is in response to a question received at full council, 2nd of July. It's been agreed that we'll set up a task and finish group to give an in-depth consideration of all aspects of the member inquiry process. So I understand, Chair, we are looking for volunteers from this group to take that forward.
Sorry, did you want to?
No, I think, there's obviously been a bit of correspondence across members' emails about the members' inquiry system, and there are some very legitimate concerns being raised. I think but there are also some very good reasons for doing it, and I think no large organisation it really exists without some sort of what an industry called a CRM system, customer relationship management system, and I think what this system as it evolves will allow us to do is to monitor the effectiveness of responses. It'll give us greater transparency. It'll treat everybody equally, and it will allow the council to identify issues at source and deal with them. So if there's a sort of recurring theme across lots of different wards, then the council gets that information and it's able to basically fix the problem. And so I think very keen to keep it developing, very keen to hear what the members are thinking about it. A lot of the things that have been raised on email are already sort of being worked on to improve. It's quite a big job and it won't actually ever really be finished. It's an evolving process as we start, the council going out to tender for a CRM system to replace Lagan, which has been there for donkey's years and doesn't really talk to any of the other systems. So as we replace the CRM system. That will also help with moments inquiries and integrate more with Fix My Street, and the feedback loops will get better. But it's a massive program. The council runs, I think, in excess of 200 different services, and they all have their own systems and processes. And this is a way to try and bring all of that together as much as possible and make the council more efficient. So we welcome everybody's input on it, and if anybody has any sort of burning issues, then do feel free to email me.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. So for new members, task and finish groups are for scrutiny are chaired by the vice chair, so it will be chaired by Ed here. We're looking for names who would like to be on that task and finish group. If you can forward your name, if you'd like to be on that task and finish group, if you can put your name forward to Sean, as I would like to ask by the end of the week, so we can start this process as quickly as possible. It will involve a lead officer as well from the council, and we'll hope to get that finished within 6 months, and then a report will come back to this committee on what their findings and recommendations are. That's not to say that everything will be done, dusted and finished within that 6 month period, and that will be the be all and end all, because it could well be that on the recommendations things can follow on after that point. I think we need further work after that. But if you can please, if you're interested, forward your names on to Sean, and we'll look to get that started as soon as possible. Ed will be the chair. Councillor Robinson, you have a question?
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding what Councillor Oliver just said, this is members' inquiries.
Yes.
Purely,
Yes.
not everything we've just heard about. It's purely members' inquiries.
Members' inquiries.
Right.
Any more questions?
And I'll certainly be on it.
That's true. If anybody else knows now.
Oh, yes.
Four. That's not the limit.
Okay. Right, thank you for that. So we're going to move on to item 6 on the agenda now, which is financial performance, final outturn of 24-25. Which is what ensures that the Cabinet are informed of the final outturn position, subject to audit, for the Council against the budget 24-25. We have Jan Willis online who's going to go through this report. Jan?
Thank you, Chair. So this is the final outturn position pre-audit, and the audit of the accounts is due to start shortly. The overall position is a net underspend of £177,000 against a total net expenditure budget of £459 million. From the summary table at 7.1 in the report, you will see that that position is made up of a number of different variances. Adults, ageing and well-being, an overspend of just under £2.7 million, largely as a result of a significant increase in the number of clients with complex residential needs and working age clients. And in children, young people and education, a really significant increase in demand for residential accommodation, out of county placements, but also significant pressures on the fostering budget. And those are the two really significant areas of overspend, offset by £10 million of savings on corporate budget items. Again, the most significant there being savings on the council's capital financing costs. So that is the high level position. On the and there is further detail in the appendices to the report on all of that. On the capital programme, there was an underspend of £73.8 million, of which £6.5 2.5 million relates to genuine underspends, i.e. where the cost of the schemes came in at less than anticipated, and 67.2 million pounds of reprofiling for some of our bigger capital schemes where those budgets will be carried forward to the current financial year. So the major schemes within that are the Energising Blythe programme, just under 13 million, the Northumberland line, 8.5 million, the Kevy Sports Block project, 3.5 million, and the Berwick Partnership redevelopment, 3.3 million, and local transport plan, 3 million. Again, there is a full list of all of the variances in Appendix J to the report. In terms of capital receipts, when we set the capital programme, we estimated that there would be about £2 million of capital receipts available to support the general fund and 4.2 million for the HRA. We actually completed just over £2 million of sales, asset sales during the year that were available to meet that £2 million general fund requirement. And there is a further about £11 million either on the market or where terms have been agreed and contracts exchanged. So on the HRA side, £2 million of that capital receipts estimate has been carried forward, so only actually achieved 2.5 million, but further sales are in the pipeline and they are predominantly right to buy sales. So the next section of the report covering treasury management activities sets out the final position in terms of the council's borrowing position. So at the 31st of March, outstanding principal was £834 million. And the report confirms that all of the treasury management activity during the year was within the parameters agreed in the treasury management strategy approved by council. In terms of BEST, the total amount of savings delivered during the year was £7.158 million, of which 2.8 million was recurrent savings, 2.1 million non-recurrent, and then there was a further £2.1 million from a review of debt recovery, predominantly historic debt, which has been sitting on our books for some time, and the bad debt provision has been reduced by £2.1 million as a result of all of that detailed work. So again, there is further detail. I would just one thing that I would mention, Chair, in relation to BEST. Members will recall that the strategic business case for BEST was refreshed, and that revised strategic business case was approved. I think it was in March. It was too late to reflect the latest forecasts in the budget. So the budget figures in the MTFP is still based on the original business case, and I think it's fair to say we have a much more sophisticated understanding of where and when the efficiencies from that programme are going to be delivered, as well as a better understanding of how those savings are likely to be reflected across all of the different elements of the council's budget. Some of them will be savings on capital budget, some of them will be HRA savings, so not contributing to the general fund efficiency savings target. And within the general fund, as I've said, some of those will be non-recurrent. So it's quite a complex picture. We do have very robust systems in place now for tracking and monitoring and reporting the delivery of those savings. But as I've said, the figures, the savings figures that have been built into the MTFP do need to be updated, and that is work which is going on at the moment. And we are due to present the first quarter monitoring report to Cabinet in September, and that will give us a much clearer picture, I think, in terms of how those savings are likely to be realised as we go through the current financial year. I'm going to stop at that point, Chair, but happy to take any questions that members have.
Okay. Any questions? One thing I will just say is, especially for new members, both yourselves and even your residents might look at some of this and go, you know, big figures for adults, age and well-being, chief executive, children, young people in education, and all of these like big titles. But if you look in your pack on page 95, those big headings have a breakdown underneath. So yes, it might have a large heading, but that breakdown shows exactly everything that goes into that. So it has a lot more detail within there to show you what the spend and savings, etc., goes into those both headings. So when you get a moment, if you haven't already, please take some time to see what that overall title and that overall spend actually involved. But any questions for Jeff? Councillor.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions, and they're not to do with a great lot of money or finance, but on page 68 is and part of the overspend on adults. It mentions the delay in telecare service resulted in a 0.41 million saving not being achieved. It just seems that we'll get this on every report. So I'm wondering what the status is at the minute with the telecare service. Has it progressed? Is it sorted now? And the other one is page 69, which mentions a 0.2 million underspend on apprenticeship. So I'm just wondering what the reasoning is behind that, and if we can have some clarification on that, please.
I can't answer those questions here and now, Councillor Dunn. I'd need to go back to the relevant officers, but I'm happy to get that information for you outside of the meeting, if that's okay.
Fine, thank you.
Yeah. Is Councillor Jackson?
It's just my lack of understanding, but there's only one category here that I don't understand the meaning of it. When it says chief executive, the other ones are very descriptive, but that one doesn't really actually tell me what the purpose of it is. So that's just a little bit more information about what that actually means. Is it?
If you look on page 95.
Yeah, I can. It's under spreadsheet. It says spreadsheet.
Yeah. There's a breakdown. It covers a number of things. Fly tipping, the fire and rescue service. All of that comes under the chief executive.
Right. It's just the actual term chief executive.
Yeah.
I mean, I see that as a person, but it's not.
It's not her one.
No.
Okay, that she's
No,
not.
okay. Yeah.
Tea and cakes, things like that.
So, Chair, if I might be able to help there. So there are a number of services that report in directly to the chief executive. So that includes HR and organisational development, legal and democratic services, fire and rescue, and also policy and performance. So those are the main services that sit under that chief executive heading.
Okay. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Two or three questions, John. I don't know how far down into the granular nature of this stuff you can go. Purchase of a house for a disabled child is £500,000. Is there any reason for that? What seems an extraordinary amount of money?
I am aware of this particular case, Councillor Robinson. the rationale for that was that it was a much more cost-effective solution for that particular family, who I understand had two severely disabled children. The alternative would have been to put them in much more expensive out of county residential care, and clearly, you know, it's not just the financial benefits, but also, you know, the benefits to that family of keeping them together. So there was a very detailed business case to support that.
Fair enough. My next question then is more kind of generic. We've got affordable homes, 15.8 million, 13.5 deferred till this year, because these is last year's accounts, and loans to third parties, 20 million, 5.8 spent, balance to be spent this year. So my question is, this year, do we need to refinance that money, or has that money been taken out of last year's pot, if you like?
Yeah, sorry, which page are you looking at, Councillor Robinson?
Well, I had a look at it online, John.
Oh,
I've written crib sheets, and that's where I want to go on as staff members and clothing.
So I think the answer, if I've understood your question correctly,
If something's carried on, do we have to refinance it in the year that it's spent? Basically.
No, so we scoop up all of our cash together, and we pool all of it. So we would look at the overall position in terms of our treasury management. So we wouldn't refinance for, you know, a specific line item. We'd look at everything in the round.
So
does that make sense?
Kind of. I'm now presuming that every year when we set a budget, at the end of that year, the money is there somewhere physically, and some of it's set aside for carrying on projects and whatnot, but the money's actually there, because as far as I've understood in the last 8 years of asking you questions, it's just a spreadsheet. You know, the money is physically there, but if it's there, I can understand it much better.
Okay, so I think there's a fundamental difference between the budget, which is merely a plan to raise or to spend money, and our actual cash position. So we manage our cash position on a dynamic day-to-day basis. So we estimate, you know, and we refresh this, you know, on a really regular basis. We refresh our cash flow forecasts, and we're able to predict how much cash we actually need on a day-to-day basis, and we manage our treasury management operations based on that cash flow forecast. So it would not be true to say that you know, that we would hold cash at any one point in time equivalent to, you know, to our expenditure plans. In fact, you know, we would not do that, because we would be incurring, we would either be incurring debt costs unnecessarily, or we would be foregoing investment income on those cash balances. So our aim is to minimize the cash balances. So we need to make sure that we've got enough cash to cover our outgoings on a daily basis, and then we manage our investment and our borrowing, you know, to you know, maximize the overall position for the council. But we don't have hundreds of millions of pounds of cash sitting around at any one time. They, you know, we will either, you know, we will either defer external borrowing and or we will invest those cash balances. And if we invest those cash balances, usually that means that we're providing those funds on a short-term basis to other local authorities, so peer-to-peer lending, and we'll be earning interest on those cash balances.
Right, well, what I'm principally concerned to understand is if we set a budget, we set a means to achieve that budget by council tax, land, all the rest of it. If something isn't spent in the year of that budget and it's carried forward to the next year, we don't need to refinance it because we've already got the cash from the previous year. Is that?
How we manage our cash and how we manage our budgets, two entirely separate things. So if, for example, there was a £10 million underspend on a particular capital project, we might well reprofile that budget and say, okay, so we're now planning to spend that in next year, and that needs to be reflected in the capital programme. But we would not set aside £10 million of cash, because the cash is managed completely separately. And I think that's the fundamental point. But that budget is carried forward. And I reiterate, a budget is merely a plan to spend. That's all it is.
I understand that, but so correct me where I'm wrong here, because it's bugging me. We need to refinance this other stuff in this current year. Anything that's deferred from last year, we don't set, it doesn't come with the cash, so then we need to refinance it, like this 13.5 million loans to third parties and whatnot. We need to refinance that in this year because we didn't spend it last year.
I'm going to bring Councillor Oliver in because he's got something to say.
Mark, if I'm going to try and attempt a sort of household analogy, I'd explain it. So let's say at the beginning of the year, you decide you're going to have to spend X amount on keeping your house running and so on, but you also might want a new car or a holiday home in Marbella or something like that. And
I'm not a conservative, mate.
and you wouldn't necessarily have the cash in the bank to do all of that stuff, because you're going to earn money during the year, and you might borrow some of the money, you might borrow the money to buy the car or whatever. If you decide to defer the purchase of the car into the following year, you wouldn't have that money sitting in your bank account at that point. You would borrow the money when you needed it, and you would look at all of the things that you're spending, and you might have cash from your huge income as a councillor that you haven't spent, and that you would put towards the car. And so it's basically a sort of agglomeration of all of the different things. And then, so when stuff doesn't get spent, I mean, the budget this year has come in at 177. That's effectively the revenue spending. That's the sort of day-to-day expenses of the council. On top of that, there's capital spending, and the cost of financing the capital spending is within that revenue spending. But if we don't, if there's, say, a delay on the Northumberland line and there's a fairly large amount of capital not spent in this last year, it gets pushed forward into the following year. The money doesn't get sort of brought in, and that might be from an external source, or it might be from borrowing, or it might be used out of reserves, or just basically cash flow within the council to keep the level of external borrowing down. So basically what they're doing all the time is monitoring the short-term horizon and looking at what's coming up in terms of the cash that needs to be spent, and then making sure through either one of those things that there is money available to meet that expenditure at that particular time. And then at the end of the year, the whole thing, actually before the end of the year, because you're working on the following year's budget during the previous year, but the whole thing, you're making a prediction of what's not going to be spent, and you're pushing it forward, and you're reforecasting that plan. And as Jan says, it is just a plan. In reality, forecast can only ever be lucky or wrong. It's a guess at that point, but it's a well-informed guess.
I kind of understand what you said, but my personal budget, I don't run like that. I would save up the money, and if it goes across 2 or 3 years, I would buy it when I actually have the money in the bank to buy it. That's the way that.
I mean,
that's what I understand. What I'm asking now is basically, are we going to tax people twice for the same project?
No.
That's all I'm asking.
No.
So the money goes with the project. If it's raised in 1 year, it can go with the project. That's all I want to know.
Yeah. So if it doesn't get, but the money is not raised, so you don't raise money to spend on a specific capital project. You take a look at all of the costs of the whole of running the council, providing all of the services, doing the capital investment, and you take an overall view. And then you look at, and of course, we can't predict the pressures on adult services and children's services. We've seen a lot of social care pressures are enormous. So but you're definitely not, people are not paying twice.
I'll take some assurance there.
Okay. All right, good.
No, all right. My last question then, Borderlands place plans, which is something we both read, but there was no original budget, and yet we've had to put 1.5 million into a revised budget for them this year. Is there, what would be the reason for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so my understanding is that some of the Borderlands place, some of the money for the Borderlands local place plans was brought forward in this year. So the money was in the capital programme in later years, but it was brought forward into the 24-25 financial year to enable some of those place plan projects to progress. So again, it's not extra money, it's just bringing forward money, I think, from future years.
Okay, thank you.
In the same way that we've moved some of the budget from 24-25 into future years, this is one coming the other way.
You okay with that one? Yes, thank you. Any more questions?
Mr. Chair, yeah, I've obviously sat and looked through it. Can I ask the question of section 106 money within the Treasury account? This money that developers have to pay for goods, agreed services, or whatever, going forward, facilities. Where does that sit within the council's, the Treasury, system? Because obviously we are, from the look of the accounts, we're sitting on quite a bit of that money at the moment.
Chair?
Yes, so that money sits in a 106 reserve and it's drawn down as and when eligible projects are identified and the expenditure is incurred. So that reserve forms part of the council's overall cash balances, which are managed in the way that's just been described. So all of the cash balances are pooled and managed on that basis. So the council, where the council is holding section 106 monies, we will be earning interest on those balances until such time as they are drawn down, in the same way as we do on all other reserves that we hold.
Just as a supplementary, the cynic in me might say there's not a lot of incentive to pay it out then to some of these projects when it's helping your short-term cash flow.
Well, we don't operate on that basis. So the objective is not to maximise the amount of interest that can be earned. The cash flow forecasts take account of information that we hold about eligible projects that have been identified, and the likely date for drawdown of those balances. But we don't delay. We don't delay the defraying of that expenditure merely to earn a bit of extra interest. And to be perfectly honest, in the overall scheme of things, it is pretty small beer in terms of the council's overall budget.
The 10, this is straying more into the planning side, but the 106 funding is tied to specific developments. And hit a certain trigger point before that money can be released for whatever it is within the agreement. So there might be a certain amount for, I'm going to say, a playground, play facility, but that's only available once it's hit sort of 500 houses. And until that point, the money can't be released. Once it's hit that, the playground has to be, provided. And it's only that's what's written into the contract, and it is a legally binding contract. So anything that veers from that has to go back to planning. It wasn't going to be a playground, it has to be a change to planning, it has to go back through the planning system. And you can't do the 400 houses, it has to be 500, that's when the funding's released, and it has to be for a playground, it can't be used for alternative purposes. So it's, if it's, the money is sat there, it's waiting for the developer to do the 500. And for whatever, whether it's education or whatever, it's at a certain trigger point, which is written into that planning contract.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any more questions?
Can I just say from a planning perspective on this? I've sat in planning for 3 terms now. Every 106 contribution, it's not a brown paper envelope that's slid under the door on the morning. It's an identified project and the funding is there for it. It's like health education, play, whatever it is. There's identified projects, the money's put against that project. So, and, we ask how much it's going to cost and that becomes the 106 agreement. It's not from La Land. It's worked out quite categorically. There's a calculus for all of it, but it's set against specific projects. So it shouldn't really be sitting in the bank very long. As soon as the project's put together, it should be spent, carried out.
Okay. Anything more on that? Councillor Bainham?
Yeah, Chair, Councillor Dunn's point, and Jan said she would send out, I'm sure all members would like a copy of that as well, rather than just go to Dunn as possible. Thank you.
We're all done with that. Okay. All right, thank you for that, Jan. We'll move on to item 7, which is the debt recovery update. We have Keith Teasdale. What do you think?
Chair. This is a report that comes to the committee twice a year. It's supposed to be the levy on the debt position, the corporate debt position, as at this meeting, the end of the last financial year, and later on in this financial year, we'll update the committee on the position as at the half-year point. It is a snapshot. Very briefly, Chair, some of the highlights. Write-offs, members will have seen that the figure of write-offs has increased actually in 2022, 2024. Couple of reasons for this. One, which Jan's already alluded to in her previous report, and that is that we're taking steps now to identify uncollectible debt at an earlier stage, so it's not sitting around. And also, particular in 24-25, there was a business rates payer company that was dissolved, registered outside of England and Wales, and there was nowhere else to go with the debt for that. Regarding the sundry debt, the end of the financial year, there was 67 million outstanding. That figure for the outstanding sundry debt currently is around 28 million. That's just as of the end of last week, just to give you a comparison. That figure, the figure can fluctuate though, depending on what may be invoiced by any of the services within the council. So, there could be a hefty invoice which could increase the outstanding debt figure. There may be a substantial payment that comes in which reduces it. The customers with balances over 100,000 at the end of March. At the end of March, there were a number of customers who between them were around about 10 million pounds. That's now down to around about 1.9 million. Moving on to council tax, the figures for council tax outstanding, methods of recovery are in the report. The collection rates for 24-25 council tax was 96.71%, which is above the average nationally for unitary authorities. The national average is 96%, and compared to, I think it's 11 of the councils within the North East, we are the second highest, have the second highest collection rate, 24.5. Business rates, again, the figures and the methods of recovery are in the report. The collection rate for NCC last year was 96.74%. The average, national average for unitaries was 97.4%. But it's always been a situation in Northumberland that because of the demographics, we have a high number of smaller properties to collect from, whereas in other more urban areas, there are larger properties with larger liabilities. So those larger properties make a significant proportion of the rate's income. So that's just to try and give members a little bit of a background. Housing benefit overpayments. I think it performed well in terms of the in-year collection of overpayments, as well as those identified in the previous years. Again, the figures are all in the report. And for the housing rents, as with everything else, figures in the report, but members will see that the performance is excellent, and rent arrears do continue to reduce. And members will also see from the report that housing teams do provide a tremendous amount of support to tenants, which in turn helps the people the arrears. That's it very much in the
Thank you, Keith. If I could just ask yourself, page 111, 112, 2029, there's a table on there for recovery methods. Is that the amount that's being recovered through those different methods? Yeah, and then over on 112.
Yeah. On page 111.
129 then goes over on the table on 112.
Yeah. They the recovery methods that were ongoing for benefits.
And that's the amount that's being recovered.
There's a number of cases covering those various stages, and the pounds are the amounts that's standing in those stages.
Could I ask then, and this goes 22, 23, 24, we have a number of cases that have gone to like enforcement agents, committal, reminders. Someone says we've got the volumes there. I'd be interested to know what it's costing the council to go through all of these stages. If that could be included in the next report as well. Because it's one thing saying we've collected all this and we've got all this outstanding. But I mean, when you say debt recovery, a number of people just think, oh, arrears. It's not. Businesses that are not paying their debts to the council as well, you know, in various guises, and that is listed through the report. But I'd be interested to know what it's costing the council to have to follow through all of these routes to try and get and they what's paid to the council as well. So it's impossible to include those all in future reports.
Sure, we will.
So just to give some thought about it, I'd be grateful.
But just helps, Chair. Enforcement. Go back to say, as for tax business rates, very briefly. Get a bill, President, get a bill.
Yeah.
Bills payable by statutory installments.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't hear anymore. If they don't pay, the process, there will be issued with a reminder notice, bring it up to date, continue, fine. If not, the next stage is to court for, this is very much in layman's terms, permission for summonses to be issued, for liability orders to be made by the court. At the point where a summons is issued, and then if a liability order is then made by the court, we will seek costs at each of those stages. Which I'll start the process, but again, the regulations state that the court shall make the order together with the costs recently occurred in going through the hardship. So there's litigation there. But the various enforcement stages, if cases go through to enforcement agent, yes, there's a cost, of course, in transferring cases to the enforcement agent. But the additional costs are of the day-to-day processing, if that makes sense. Committal, although there has been taken down that route for several years, if a case gets to that stage, there'll be costs, like costs granted. And again, the bankruptcy and insolvency stages, charging order stages, there would be costs. We would pay costs for the cost orders, each of those stages to probably get our internal costs.
Chair, if I might just intervene, sorry, and I do need to leave after this for another meeting. Can I suggest that we take this away and have a look at it, because I think as well as sort of the council's internal costs of chasing these debts, external enforcement costs, there might also be legal costs. Yeah. And of course there is also the interest loss, the cash flow loss, you know, where people don't pay on time. So can we take that away and do a bit of further work on that with a view to including something in the next report, which I think is what you're asking for?
Yes, please, Jan. Yeah. I understand you've got to leave as well. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions on this report? Yes, Councillor Austin.
It's two minor things. One, to reinforce what you're saying, it'd be nice to have a net position of when we have a debt, you then have a cost of enforcement. So what is the net position? So I totally agree with that one. The second one is, so regarding on page, say, for example, 105, can we have a little bit more consistency? I'm not saying it's not a big criticism, but could we have a consistency in reporting of the numbers? Like, for example, 21, 22, we go down to the pennies, and the pennies have been dropped off in 24, 25. And then later on in the report, we deal with whole thousands. Elsewhere, we deal with millions. So we have an inconsistent way of reporting numbers. That sometimes you look at a number and you think, oh, that's big, but then you realise there's pennies involved.
Yeah. Okay.
So Robinson beat you by a fraction of a second there, councillor.
Right, it's a strange question, this one. Page 108. I mean, I want to say it's council tax. Arrears at 31st of March 2025 are at the highest ever level. This is due, that's unequivocal. This is due to the impact of year-on-year increases in the amount of council tax payable and the increases in the cost of living generally. Are we actually seeing that the arrears have built up because we're charging too much council tax?
Well, I think council tax arrears uncollected will increase year on year.
If there's council tax payable,
And it's not a criticism or anything, it's just one of the reasons why. People do have to pay more each year because council tax up each year. So that does have a knock-on effect. It increases arrears.
well, I think you're giving us a reason not to vote for council tax increases. Because the impact that this stuff has on people, what we're saying here isn't, the reason isn't a callous disregard to pay your council tax. What we're saying here is, it's people fighting to keep their head above water. That's what you said.
That would be one of the
Yeah.
we do see people who are struggling,
Yeah,
not just with council tax, but
I quite understand what you're saying there. It makes me reflect on my position going forward, obviously.
Yeah, I think my question was much the same as Malcolm's, but I'm a couple of pages further forward on page 105. Really pleased to see the highlighted paragraph here that says we'll now have the much improved process to identify irrecoverable debts earlier, but really concerned that the debts that it's highlighting above is council tax and housing rent and other benefits and other debt. So I'm just concerned that we might be able to identify them, but they're just getting worse for the people at ground level. So the question is much the same as Councillor Robinson's. So really, I think we need to have a really big think about what actions are actually taken to minimise the effects of this irrecoverable debts on residents.
Councillor Aldi, you want to come in?
Yeah, I think there's, first of all, I think that the highlighted paragraph highlights the fact that there's been a one-off exercise to identify irrecoverable debt. And there's, so basically an extra effort put into it. So that has led to an increase in this year. I'd expect that then to sort of start levelling down in future years, because actually what we've done effectively is had a bit of a clear out of money that you're never going to be able to recover. So I don't see that this is likely to be an ongoing increasing trend. And if you look at the actual, the numbers, the council tax element of that has gone up reasonably modestly compared to other things. Business rates has gone up quite a lot, and then the sundry debt's gone up quite a lot. And I'm assuming that's because you've identified the people that are never going to pay, and that's been therefore written off at that point. So it's not. This is not. I don't think this is indicative of extra pressure being put on individual council taxpayers. This is basically the council getting better at identifying the debt that it's never going to recover, and writing it off, and just doing that as a one-off exercise, and that will sort of balance. It'll sort of, you won't see that trend continuing in future years. And then just a quick comment on what Malcolm was saying is, obviously we do, people are under financial pressure, and utility bills have gone up, etc., etc. But we do have a very generous, the second most generous council tax support scheme. in the northeast of England. So that, you know, it's worth highlighting that as well. And there's a lot of effort, particularly in the sort of COVID years and the following COVID, gone into supporting those people that need that support most.
Well, I presume if they're taking that support, it won't be on the arrears lists.
No, that's true. Yeah, there's got a lot of people that have been supported wouldn't be on the arrears list. Well, they might be on the arrears list because it might be, they're still making an 8% contribution.
Charging too much council tax.
But don't get you back.
On that shows page 108. There's the arrears. That's an amount of money. So do we have figures for the amount of houses that are, or the amount of households that are, as opposed to just the amount of money? But it might be that the number of households is just staying the same, but the arrears are going up because of the council tax going up.
We have the number of accounts or liability orders. Not specifically household, because council taxpayers and council taxpayers live one or more accounts.
Can I just go back to what Councillor Oliver was saying before? Are we not just masking the problem by writing these off? Not reporting it, because we're not going to understand the number of people who are struggling if we're going to get to a point and then write off a whole load of debts.
Well, a couple of points there. First of all, I think most of the write-offs are not sort of individual people, they're sort of organisations, so companies or the sundry debtors. And so but there is no point in leaving an outstanding debt if you know you can never recover it. You're reporting information that is pointless because so it's, and there is a requirement on the council to write off the debt as soon as it knows with certainty that it can never recover it, because that effectively is, it's an accounting requirement that the council has to perform. So it's not an attempt to mask anything. It's basically it's sound financial management.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any more?
Yeah, can I just come back with what Councillor Oliver said there, but we hope this would be like a plateau and it wouldn't be a recurring thing. Is there any way that this committee can monitor this before the end of this year? Can you do it 6 monthly or something to see if that is actually?
It is.
Yeah, okay.
We're all done. We'll note that report and it will be back in 6 months' time. Yep. All right. We'll move on, or should we say move back to item 5, which is the risk management strategy. And the report seeks approval for the council's updated risk management strategy. And we're asking Kevin McDonald to go through this, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'm Kevin McDonald. I'm the Head of Internal Audit and Risk Management. The Council has a statutory responsibility to have effective arrangements for the management of risk within its operations. As you will probably appreciate, there is a wide range of guidance and best practices to how we satisfy that requirement. One of the recommendations or the recommended practices is that we have a risk management strategy, and that is reviewed on a regular basis. So in April, we had a refreshed risk management strategy agreed by Cabinet. What that essentially did was we previously had a risk management policy, risk management strategy, and a risk management framework, all trying to meet our statutory responsibility. So what we did was just review all of those and trying to produce one comprehensive document, which is the document in front of the committee this morning. So basically what the strategy tries to do is outline how we as an organisation are going to manage our risks in terms of achieving the council's objectives. in terms of the updated or refreshed strategy from what was there previously, we obviously took the opportunity to look at best practice and guidance and make any adjustments that were relevant. But in the vast majority of cases, the changes were cosmetic rather than material changes. And excuse me. And basically just codified the arrangements which are already in place and becoming embedded across the organisation in terms of how we manage risk on an ongoing basis. Chair, I wouldn't propose to say too much more than that, but obviously more than happy to take any questions.
Before questions, what I will say is, if I could draw your attention to page 36 and 37, that highlights the roles and responsibilities throughout the council, cabinet, this committee, portfolio holder, the audit committee, etc., and corporate services, economic growth, review and security committee is to monitor, review, make recommendations about the risk strategy. If you wish to know more about the risks themselves, anyone who's not on audit, you can still attend audit committee or look at papers or look at the recordings, and that has more detail about the risks. When I say more detail, it's what's available in public, because the minute detail of the risks is on a part 2. But you're more than welcome to go along to the audit committees, and the risks themselves will be delivered by Kevin in his wonderful way. And he'll go through it at audit. But if you want to know more about the risks in further detail, you're more than welcome to attend audit. Besides that, has anyone got any questions about Kevin's report? Councillor Robinson.
For change. You'll not be aware, but it's taken me over 2 years to get this presentation to this committee. Even though we can request them seemingly, but it's taken over 2 years. I've got 2 questions really. Risk appraisal panel excluding advance. So I want to ask, why are we excluding advance for risk assessment? And if this committee is to monitor, review and make recommendations on risk assessment, I want to know, when I've read the policy, it seems like a slow burn, the escalation, you hit one level, you escalate to another level, you escalate to another. Is there a quick response? If something happens and we need a response immediately, what's in place to cope with that? So the advanced thing and the immediate response.
Yeah, okay, no problem. Chair, if I may, I'll take the second one first, because that's probably the easier answer. So I think what the risk, there's a couple of key words within the risk management strategy where it talks about formal review. So what the strategy talks about is how we will formally review and report. However, as you would imagine, risks are reviewed on a daily, sometimes hourly basis, depending on what the risks are. So the actual process of risk management day to day is much more live than that. So we will have risks potentially being moved around on the risk registers before the next scheduled formal one, but that doesn't stop it for a while. So risk owners are looking at that regularly. So we had in the most recent report, which went to Cabinet 2 weeks ago, we had one of the corporate risks de-escalated down. Now, in reality, that happened about 4 to 5 months ago, but it's just the formal reporting cycle then catches up. So, yes, it happens live.
I'm more interested in the unplanned events, what it talks about. How do we manage the unplanned? Have we got an emergency committee, whatever,
So, and not necessarily an emergency committee as such, but what we have is we have new risks being raised all the time. So again, we don't wait until there's a formal review cycle. What we will have is that the team, obviously, because of the nature of the work, they're split all across the organisation on a frequent basis. There's a good link in with all of those services. So what we tend to happen is we'll get something's happened. How do we add a risk to our risk register, which is great from my perspective as the head of risk management, also as the head of internal audit, thinking that those arrangements are in place where managers actively seek us out to make sure that risks are being updated and recorded on a timely basis. we are in the process of looking at how we can take that even further. So can we utilise some of, and this is, I'm saying, I'm going to say it, but I'm kind of conscious that we're not very far down the road yet, Councillor Robinson, in terms of how we can use some technology and digital to try and bring that so that we build up dashboards of emerging risks and flash those across. As something happens, how do we get a risk raised, and then how do we make other people aware of it on a dashboard? So that's the idea we've got, but it's very early stages. So, but they're the things that we're thinking about around how we get that out there more to exactly as you say, so that we don't wait six months and then say, well, that happened 5 months ago. So that's definitely not the case.
Advanced stuff.
In terms of the advanced one, it's a tricky one because the risk appraisal panel almost sits outside of the risk management strategy and policy. So that's more a constitutional matter. And the risk appraisal panel isn't a process that's led by our team. So we can offer support to that. But I think that due to the rarity of them happening, it's something that certainly for a number of years we haven't supported the risk appraisal panel process. I know there was a review of the terms of reference a little while ago as part of the constitutional update. I assume it's probably part of that. But also in terms of Advanced Northumberland, we also have the Cabinet Shareholder Committee. So it's probably an explicit requirement of that committee to determine that rather than a separate panel. I don't know if Councillor Oliver wants to add to that.
Just on the point about risk appraisal panel, I think it really do. I've had in the past been to some of those meetings, and they were dealing very specifically. I think the last one I went to, I think, was basically lending some money to a dog home that was providing a lot of services actually to the animal welfare team at NCC to keep it, it had been lost its premises or something. And so it was to do with sort of very specific externally related things. And it's probably a little bit of a misnomer to call it a risk appraisal panel because there are so many other risk management mechanisms in place. And on Advance, there's obviously the shareholder committee that Kevin's mentioned. There's it has its own audit committee. Advance comes regularly to the council's audit committee, and obviously the directors of Advance have a regular contact with the directors, the exec directors of the council, and there's a shareholder representative on the board of Advance. So I think the Advance is an important part of an important subsidiary of the council, and it's only right that it has very, very specific sort of risk management processes and procedures in place to manage it, because there's a lot of money involved and a lot of big projects. So it's enabling throughout the county. So that's all dealt with separate. And the risk appraisal panel definitely would not be the appropriate place to be looking at what Advance does.
I mean, like you said, there's a lot of money involved here, a lot of other stuff, reputational damage and all sorts. So I would imagine Advance would be on some risk register somewhere. I would imagine somebody is keeping that.
Yeah, so one of
there was an excuse made to push through the changes that we've just seen.
No, I think you're absolutely right. There were 10, the highest level of risk. Kevin mentioned that one of them had dropped off the list recently. There are now 10, and one of them is wholly owned companies. And those risks all have a cabinet member and an executive director assigned to them. But basically, those risks get special attention, and they are, Advance is very much within the wholly owned company risk. The other thing you mentioned around a specific event happening and how we deal with that. One of the other risks of those 10 is the civil contingency and business continuity risk, which again has, so each of these risks has a whole heap of things that are in place to mitigate the risks. So that has, there are emergency response procedures. So if you have a storm Arwen or a cyber attack or something like that, there are processes and procedures in place to mitigate those risks. And and so there are definitely plans there.
Good, I'm happy to hear advance has got its own risk assessment. Thank you.
Just a reminder as well, I pointed to that rules and responsibilities, but on page 37, it does say all members are all responsible. Everyone in the council, whether it's an employee or a member, we all have responsibilities. Any questions?
If something you can do, I've done it myself, Jeff. I've put stuff the risk register myself, so it works.
Any more questions on it? Would recommend, just at least if you're not going to go along toward it, have a look at some of the recordings when it's on the agenda and see what's the thought. It is discussed in more. Kevin's wonderful. So that was the last, sorry, we'll move on to item 9, corporate services, economic growth, performance screening committee, work programme and monitoring reports, 25, 26.
Yeah, well, the health reference of the page 122, so, the reference, for reports, on that list. What I've done is, what we look for, 3 parts. The first part is sort of a business as usual, work programme of all the improvements that have been, added from previous years, the sort of things that you would normally look at. Such as in September will be annual workforce reports, and in November a regeneration update. Now, there are sort of annual reports that throw up a lot of issues within them. So if you look at a report, you want to pick on a particular issue, perhaps sickness absence or whatever from the workforce report, we want to have a particular down and identify that you come back and give a full report. So these sort of general overview reports that may generate further reports from those. What I've also done is from page 124 to 125 is to just highlight the issues that the committee looked at last year. Sort of give you an idea of where some of the things that we have been looking at, just in case that the benefit of new members want to look at some of these issues in particular. And what I'm sort of demonstrating here is that they've actually have been looked at. That's not to say that you can look at them again, but perhaps not immediately. You might want to sort of bide your time and perhaps look at them further. For example, the Broadband Place programme, that will be part of the overall regeneration report that comes to you in November. The Broadband Place programme will be part of that. And it will list a number of projects right across the county. And it may well be that you may want to identify 1 or 2 projects that you feel as though it needs a deeper look at. So you'll get that report in November, and that'll give you the option perhaps to identify the reports from it. You'll see that the Camas hyperscale data centre was looked at last year. The committee received a very detailed presentation from QTS and Blackstone on that, and they did promise that as the programme develops, they will more than happy to come back and talk to you about those developments. So that's on the back burner, and we'll bring those through as there's more story to tell. The important really thing to add to that is that the work programme really belongs to this year. It reflects your priorities. We have this item on the agenda at every meeting, and it gives you the opportunity to raise issues you feel as though should go to the work programme. And also, as part of that process, to reprioritise things as you go through the year. So things that might be important to you now for perhaps September and November. By the time you get to September and November, there might be other things, more important things that you might feel that should displace those on the work programme. So that is why we tend not to fill it too early. I've given you more or less of a skeleton draft So it allows you to identify your own vulnerabilities. So that chair, if the members have any issues that we want to create a part of the work programme, but also say that not every issue is a scrutiny issue. It may well be that you have a lot of issues that you might want to raise. It might well be one of the other scrutiny committees, or it might be more of a local issue, or the lax, or it could be an issue for Kevin and audit rather than for this committee. So if you raise an issue, you look into it, but it may well not be for this. Yeah, just that's not
I'm pleased that you added that. I was going to say not everything is a scrutiny item, and not everything. You might think that it will come to this committee, but anything that is requested via scrutiny goes to a scrutiny chairs group, and we discuss that. And it might be better placed at a different scrutiny committee because it could be more localised, or it could be better discussed, as Sean says, at a RAC, etc. But something could just be a question to an officer and better handled that way. So if you've got anything that you want to know something more about, get in touch, and it can be directed in the appropriate manner. There are regular items that will come up through this scrutiny. It could be on an annual basis. It could be 6 monthly, like Keith had mentioned on the debt report. But if in doubt, please just ask. Everything's a learning curve. Yeah. Sometimes it's more steeply, sometimes it can be dealt with quite easily.
And just on that, as far as possible, if we could avoid information only reports, because at the end of the day, other than monitoring, which is essentially what we've been doing today, you really want to be looking at issues that actually make a difference, that has a so what to it, that has a sort of a recommendation or moves things forward. Just sort of nodding things through and noting things, meeting after meeting, maybe. But anyway, that's enough for me.
Councillor Taylor, you had your hand up?
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is going to be for this committee, but I'm going to put it out there. We have, as councillors, we asked to get involved with people who are being evicted from their property. People ask about the number of empty properties around Northumberland. What is the county doing about this? Home Finder have a list of people. In my particular area, I know of 6 houses that are currently sitting empty, and this won't be just local to mine. Could this committee look into or have a report on empty properties in Northumberland and what the county are doing to look at either pushing people forward to either selling the properties or renting them out and not just leaving them sitting empty when we've got people who are potentially homeless or who are in the wrong type of accommodation? Would that be something that this committee could look at?
Yes and no. So empty homes is a report that does go to the community place workers. I've had it a couple of times in the
yes, twice in the last 4 years. I think some quite beefy recommendations came up, but that really so the Home Finder system is being worked on to improve its effectiveness, and the allocations policies are also being looked at to improve their effectiveness. But they only relate to council property and social housing company organisation property, so Carbon and Venetia and etc. They don't obviously impact on the private, because it sounds like what you're talking about is a lot of privately owned properties that are sitting empty.
They're just sitting empty.
What we have done as a council, though, is double the council tax on those properties. So there's a financial, and I think that goes up further than double, doesn't it? Eventually, it's sort of over years. So there's a financial incentive for people to get those properties either sold or filled or whatever and moved on. So I'm not sure what other tools the council would have, but that's something that the Communities in Place Committee could definitely look at.
It's not just those type of properties. So there are a number of properties that are being managed by county where people are in care homes and they're managing the properties on behalf of the person.
Right.
They're not ready to sell them. So there are a number of elements in there.
So what I will do is I will send you the reports and the minutes from the last time it was considered by the community. If, when you've read those documents, if you still want to raise it or bring it forward, if you could put me a note to say exactly what you want the committee to look at.
Yeah.
Quite specific in that.
Okay,
And then I will raise it with the chair of the community place and see if we can get it.
thank you.
But I will do that first, and then you come back to.
Yeah, well, definitely. Thank you.
Right, item 10 is urgent business, and I have no items of urgent business. So I'd just like to say thank you for today and bring the meeting to a close.
Thank you.